It wasn't until I was in my late 20s that the story behind my birth and my birth mother's crisis pregnancy really came full circle. After many years of looking to find my birth mother, the Lord, through my husband Kyle, led us on the path that would intersect our lives together, and fortunately we did find each other, and it was a wonderful time in my life. It was a very positive experience, and she shed more light after we met about how the pregnancy care center that she was involved with really counseled her and supported her and enabled her to make the decision to carry me full term. And if she hadn't made that decision, and if she hadn't had that support from that care center, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. We're so blessed in the Triad area to have Salem Pregnancy Care Center as a resource, and have had for 30 years in this community. It's something that is very important to our family, and my husband Kyle was introduced as a board member a number of years ago and has served tirelessly with this organization. And then later I became a part of the counseling services that they offered here, and also as a board member to support Salem Pregnancy Care Center. It's not just a community outreach for us, it's personal. If I were giving counsel to a young woman in a crisis pregnancy situation, I would ask her to consider the longevity of the decision that is before her, and that in the immediate chaos and crisis of the now, sometimes the future of that decision can't be understood fully. And I'm living proof that to choose life has long-term, far-reaching blessings.
You know, 1984, 85 as well, had a lot of significant things that happened. It's funny how the 2 years kind of correlate with the life that God has given me. In 84, I met the young lady that was soon to become my wife, soon meaning 6 years later. In 1985, Salem Pregnancy began its ministry. And the reason that it's interesting is I remember, believe it or not, on a first date, my girlfriend at the time shared with me that she was adopted. And that was tucked away in my heart for many, many years until I had my firstborn. When my wife and I had our firstborn child, I looked into the eyes of that beautiful baby, Ashton, and I just asked myself, who does she favor? And that's when that adoption story that I was told about in 1984 came to reality. And God placed a spark in my heart that said, find the birth mother. So I began, really without permission from my wife. Later I got it, but it took 3 years almost of a story that I could tell in and of itself, and it would take too long. But I will never forget, on my wife's birthday, on her 27th birthday, we received a package in the mail from an adoption agency, very similar to Salem Pregnancy, that had all the identifying information. And that night, I made a few phone calls. And finally, after 3 years, I was speaking with the mother that gave birth to my wife. So, fast forward 10 or 12 years after I found my wife's birth mother, I was introduced to Salem Pregnancy. And it was by a board member, Steve Robertson. And when Steve told me about the work that was being done in Winston-Salem with Salem Pregnancy Care Center, God placed on my heart a strong desire to be a part of the ministry, because I realized that the women that walk through the doors of Salem Pregnancy are no different than my wife's birth mother, who walked through the doors of a pregnancy care center in Dallas, Texas in 1968. She was a child. Unlike many of the children and young adults that walk through the doors of Salem. So, people ask me, why am I interested in Salem Pregnancy? All I got to do is look at my wife and realize that the tough decision that was made by her birth mother many years ago, and no doubt the workers, the social workers that were involved with her at the Pregnancy Care Center, helped her make a wise decision. I can assure you the people at Salem Pregnancy Care Center care equally about the clients that walk in and out of their door every day. We seek out in our life, and as Christians we try to determine what is our purpose. Purpose is to serve God, but what is our purpose in serving Him on this earth? When we took our first trip to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I watched my wife get off the airplane, go through customs, and there, when the doors opened, there was this lady standing there with her left hand to the east and her right hand to the west, waiting for a hug for the first time. The daughter that she only saw briefly on January the 27th, 1968. We spent that week with her and Elizabeth's newfound brothers and sisters, and it was amazing. When we got on the plane to come home to North Carolina, we were crying. We were as emotional as a young couple had ever been. And we knew, and we told each other on that plane ride back to Charlotte, North Carolina, that God's purpose is for us to share this story and to share the true meaning of life. I hope you'll hear this story and in some way be motivated to learn more about Salem Pregnancy Care Center, because God's got a purpose for you, and Salem Pregnancy is a wonderful place to be a part of that purpose.